We are joined again by Mr. MadBitcoin and by Vlad from Bitcoin Magazine. Hello. Got to switch it on. Button up.
Yo.
Perfect. That should
Hi
work.
there.
Yes.
So do I sit next to you? Oh,
yes.
it's a camera setup.
Yeah, we got a wide shot. We're all set.
Yep. 3 different cameras, 4 now, with the iPhone pointing at us too. Plus that webcam, multi-camera setup, much professional.
Check out my fancy Noddle hoodie.
Power user.
Power user, yeah.
Yep, mine is over there. Didn't even yet have a chance to look at it. Thank you very much, Square2 and Keto Miner. Awesome project. A child of the WCN.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Birthed on our air. Messy.
As it should be. Vlad, I would love to talk to you, but I need coffee very, very much. So
you want me to bring you coffee, right?
No. You're staying here. We'll send him out. But
yep.
Guess what, Max? There is no coffee.
There is still not?
No, there's no coffee. There seems to be no food. There's like bananas, oranges, and apples, but it looked like they maybe wanted to sell them. Then they also are selling croquettes or some kind of cheese balls or something. So that's death, poison for those of us who don't like cheese and milk. But yeah, no, there seems to be no food. I think we're going to have to Uber Eats or something, or like Deliveroo. Like we've got to just order something up and have them come up to the front door. Hamburger for one person. Because I think that's what it's getting to here. It's getting pretty wild west out there. I mean, you could get a Fritz Cola, or this is a lemonade of some kind.
Means food.
I don't know what Ingwer is, but yeah.
Ingwer, that's ginger. So Pierce,
perfect.
See
this
you
is good
in just
for me.
a second.
All right.
Was that Pierce or Pierce as in a person?
Bit of both. Might be looking for Pierce.
So we're joined by Vlad from Bitcoin Magazine. How's it going, Vlad?
Well, I just got here. I still have no idea what's going on. I haven't seen the schedule, but you grabbed me on the hallway.
That's the way we do it. We get you right away off that hallway track onto the couch. So we were recently in Romania, of all places. We hung out in Cluj-Napoca, which was strange for me, but normal for you. How was the Transylvania Bitcoin conference?
It was very nice because it was a small event. And these events tend to be, nicer, and people get to talk to you. And I got to speak to Adam back and have dinner with him, which is unusual. It's not something that a lot of people can claim to have done.
Definitely not.
I've met David Chom earlier this year, and I've met
Chommy
Adam
and Cash.
back.
Yeah.
So I guess the only one on my list right now is Nick Szabo.
Yeah, I've met Nick Szabo. He's pretty cool. He's kind of like Vitalik. He has that distance, that computer geek distance. You're like talking to him and you're like, he's probably thinking about math right now. But no, he's fun. And Adam Back is really cool. He's really down to earth, and he talks to everybody, and he hangs out with normal people. They probably used to have a VIP room here, but then they put me in it. So now it's gotten very empty, and there's not a VIP in sight. There's just us and boxes of T-shirts and some couches. But I think that's how it should be. We don't need VIPs.
This industry doesn't
nonsense.
have any VIPs. We're all Bitcoin citizens. And we should establish the kind of culture which doesn't endorse celebrities, just like the Hollywood stuff that we see. I think right now we have people who are excessively influential, and they don't really embody that don't trust, verify culture that has been promoted in the early days. They just act as authorities, and they shape the narrative of what Bitcoin should be. And my worry right now sometimes is that we are looking like a cult to outsiders.
Things like people demanding that you only eat meat, saying that all true Bitcoiners only eat meat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, which is a no true Scotsman fallacy. It's one of the best logical fallacies. You just define the group. You say, no true Scotsman would wear that. And then it's a fallacy. It's a logical flaw.
I mean, I have been a vegetarian for over 2 years.
How can you be a Bitcoiner? No true Bitcoiner is a vegetarian, obviously. Nonsense.
And I remember at one point I had an interaction with Saifedean. I think I posted something about being a vegetarian, being into Bitcoin, and how these two are not correlated. And Saifedean just replied. I did not expect that, because I presume he is a busy person.
Yeah.
He replied and said, oh, all of your Bitcoins will be confiscated, sir.
Yeah, it's not helpful nonsense. I mean, it's more of these like you're saying, making Bitcoin seem like a cult, making it seem like idiots, having these people running around who are just like, yeah, you have to eat the way that I eat, and anyone who doesn't eat the way that I eat is a, you know, just wrong. I mean, they're very limited in their worldview. I mean, they have one thing and they believe in it, and
Oh,
we'll see if that
I think
works.
that they're trying to turn the idea of being a Bitcoiner into a lifestyle. And I see that all these companies are trying to capitalize on it
Hmm.
and imply that if you want to be a true Bitcoiner, you have to own their product, like the Nodal or the Casa or
Yeah, or
the
the Trezor
Ledger,
or
the
the
Trezor.
Ledger. Yeah, I
Exactly.
could see that.
They're trying to imprint in the back of your mind the idea that you're not a true Bitcoiner unless you buy their products. And I saw that people sometimes say it's expensive to be a Bitcoiner because you pay $300 for a node and then you have to buy a hardware wallet. And no, not really. If
Yeah,
you're
you don't
smart and
have
you
to.
know
No.
which software to use and you run your full node, you're just fine.
Well, and you don't have to run a node, but I do. Some of those products are better than others. I'd say like Casa or Nodal, people that are trying to get you to contribute to the network. That's really good. It adds to decentralization. It distributes the blockchain. If you just run a full node, and the kind of one I like is you just plug it in and you don't have to mess with it anymore. So you're just running the node, and now you're helping the network. And if you have the extra money, you can do it. But like you're saying, you definitely don't have to have your own node. As far as a hardware wallet, if you have too much money invested into Bitcoin, you should probably get a hardware wallet. But sometimes paper wallets can be okay depending on how you generate them. It can be very difficult to generate them properly, things like that. And even then, a hardware wallet, at some point, we are trusting the hardware wallet company. So there is a little bit of trust there as well. But yeah, you don't have to buy that. You don't have to buy meat. You don't have to buy this seminar or that conference or even going to a conference. A lot of people today are wearing pink shirts at the conference, and that means that they volunteered. So maybe they don't have the money for a big expensive Bitcoin conference, but if they can get themselves here, which if you live in Europe, you can use Flixbus for $20. You can go almost anywhere. The trains are relatively inexpensive. The flights are actually pretty cheap. It's not very big here. It's not quite going cross country in the U.S. It's $200 here or there. You can get around. So if you can do that, and then you want to go to the conference but you don't have a ticket, you can volunteer. Like check out their webpage, check out their thing, be active in their Slack or their Discord, their forum, and get out there. So yeah, there are opportunities that don't cost money.
Yeah, and they're very nice and useful and educational.
Hmm. Yeah, and you'll still get to see some talks and learn stuff, and maybe talk to the people you want to talk to, and all those kind of things. It's a lot easier if you're a pink shirt volunteer rather than maybe someone just hanging out outside. And even hanging out outside, if you want to go to the bars later, you can generally find out where people are going to go. You can hang out with them for free at the bar, maybe the cost of buying them a drink or buying yourself a drink. So it is very affordable. You can get involved in this community. Too many people, I know how it's like. You want to stay home and do nothing. You're like, I'm not a part of that Bitcoin community. I'm just some weirdo or whatever. And yeah, I remember back in like May of 2013, I'd only been doing my show like a week or two. So I was like, oh, I'm not part of this. I'm like this little outsider. And everybody else drove down to San Jose and went to this epic Bitcoin convention where they all met each other and all started companies and all these things. I was right there and I could have gone, but I didn't go. So it's always better to go. It's always better to spend the money, get the experience. I know everyone's like, oh, I have to save all my Satoshis or whatever. But at a certain point, you have to spend to live your life. So if your life includes going to a fun Bitcoin conference or checking out Romania and going to a salt mine, I never thought I'd be there. But thanks to Bitcoin, we went to a salt mine. Did you go? Was it great? What did you think?
I didn't go during that trip because the day before I got food poisoning and I
Oh,
had to delay
no.
my trip. But I
Oh,
have visited the mine before because I'm Romanian
sure.
and it's very nice.
Yeah, it
It's
wasn't.
the work of basically slavery during the communist regime when people were sent to forced labor camps. And yeah, it's a monument of human resilience and just the will to do something great. And I don't think all the attractions, like I think there's a roller coaster and an area where you have boats. I don't think those were around when they were digging, but they just
No.
wanted to make this salt mine and supposedly it has some very good health benefits to just be there and breathe that salty air.
That's very interesting. I'll definitely try that. Yeah, they told us a lot about the how just when the mine was finished, that's when they didn't need it anymore. It was like 1952, and they'd figured out better ways, cheaper ways to get salt. They could ship it in, but it was this incredible undertaking that a huge winch they could pull like giant blocks of salt out. And they told us about how the horses would go around in a circle forever, and they were older military horses, mostly blind, and that while the miners got to go home for like 4 hours a night or something like that, which is absolutely terrible. And you can't even imagine, like, I know commuting and working hard, all these things, but to actually do physical labor, then to have, half a night's sleep, then to go back and do it again sounds horrible. But then again, the horses were never let outside. So the horses would just go in circles and die down there. And that was a pretty dark story. And then they're like, now here's some mini golf, and here's some pool tables, and all this kind of it's practically like a kid's birthday party down there. And I imagine if you lived in Romania, it would be a totally fun thing. Go to the salt mine for your birthday or party or anniversary or school party or something, right?
I think a lot of young ones go to these places and have fun and have no idea how they came out
No,
to exist.
no.
And what baffles me right now is when I see the West have this fetish for socialism. And I don't mean helping people, because that's a nice and noble idea.
Sure.
But it's about state centralization and concentration of power. And you haven't had the kind of experience which leads to the bad scenarios. We have had it very recently. We understood that it's terrible. But then again, the American media is so powerful that I see many socialists, and I mean hardcore socialists, who
Sure.
might even switch to the communist extreme in my generation, even though their parents were oppressed and were poor and were only living with, I guess during the winter it was very cold because they had no heating, and electricity was only running for 12 hours a day, and they only had television programs for 1 hour a day. And the food that they were getting was based on a card which said which amounts of food each family was allowed to have in a month. And it didn't matter if you're fat or skinny or if you had a medical condition, you're getting the same kind of amount, which created a black market for people selling stuff, and everybody was stealing from their workplace.
Sure.
Like a baker would take bread and trade it for milk and do barter, because when it's everybody's property, then it's actually nobody's. So they would just take away whatever they were producing, and it was all inefficient. But when it's a centralized circular economy for which the government can just inflate or get in debt, but that's a whole different story with debt in Romania.
Well, and that is starting to change. If they had only Bitcoin, the government wouldn't be able to print any debt. So they couldn't do it for good things like social programs, but they also can't do it for bad things like war or things like, disaster relief, that you have to actually pay for it now. So it does change a lot of things. We do see, I mean, there are some socialist ideas that are seeming to work, like national health care, having a single payer, and as well as focusing on preventative care, and the general idea that if we have a healthy populace, they're going to work more, they're going to be able to go to work, they're going to produce more, we're going to tax them more, we're going to bring in more revenue, we're going to pay for the healthcare program for the healthy populace. So like the healthcare side, I see. The free college thing, I also think is a good idea. Just in general, we need more smart people, we need more colleges. But then, like you're saying, when it starts to be state running factories, state owning everything, state control, it always seems that with the extreme socialism, and again, I think I want to talk about things on a scale. There's a scale. Healthcare one thing, college maybe a little, and then total state control. But it always does seem to go dark, right? It starts out, Trotsky is talking about his ideas, then Stalin has him murdered, in Mexico, and it's always this kind of like there's a one person in power. And even in China recently, I want to say it was Deng Xiaoping, the previous president, had more of an open policy, and he was going to work with the West, and he was dialing down the communism, kind of dialing up the capitalism. But now we see Xi Jinping, the new leader, who apparently does not look like Winnie the Pooh, according to South Park. That's very important. Does not look. So don't do any memes like that. It's not funny. But yeah, no, his has gone the complete other way. He's tightening up the communism, tightening up the things, and now we're seeing it start to come out with the Hong Kong problem spilling over into Blizzard Entertainment, South Park, the NBA now very much embroiled in that. What do you think about Hong Kong? About the one small thing that Britain gave back for some reason because of a 100-year-old treaty. They could have just said, no, those are our people now. We want to protect them. But they were given back with this idea of 2 countries, 1 system, and that they would have 50 years of free reign before they tightened it. But we've seen it in the 2014 umbrella revolution, they lost the ability to elect their own governor. Then there was this, I forget the word, the law where extradition type law. China can take people away if they have a legal reason to take them from Hong Kong. And that really kicked it off. And then now it seems like it's free Hong Kong, which is the ultimate goal. Like it's a way beyond just one election or one government or anything. But what do you think of the small fighting the large?
I think Hong Kong is very different from China from many points of view. It's a very powerful economic center. There's a lot of banking and corporate stuff going on. And I don't think China is dumb from this point of view. They understand the value proposition and what Hong Kong brings to them. But at the same point, they're pushing it. They're trying to bring their own legislative system, which also enables death penalties to Hong Kong. And that's a different
And
culture.
work camps, and even on the South Park episode, Randy was taken to prison. People were killed around him. People were beaten. He was beaten. Bad food, bad conditions. Again, it's
Forced labor.
Forced labor. Yeah.
And we tend to turn our backs and just look the other way whenever this happens, just because we assume that it's only bad when it takes place in our Western culture and society. And we say, oh, that's been part of their culture for thousands of years. But that's very hypocritical if we assume that human rights are universal. And I have become a very big skeptic of the United Nations lately. When I was in university and I did political science, the idea of working for the UN seemed like the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Because it seems so nice and benevolent, like maintaining peace and spreading development across poor nations and meddling with the diplomacy to make sure that wars don't start. But then you see Donald Trump withdrawing troops from northern Iran, which is the former Kurdistan, and then Turkey bombing the area within hours, which is crazy. That's a single point of failure. So if one great power of the world just says, we're going to take our troops away from this area, it enables neighbors to attack each other. It only proves that we are as tribal as ever, and that nation states like Turkey haven't moved on from their decades, centuries of conquering. And Romania has been at war with Turkey for centuries, I think since the dawn of the Middle Ages, and up until we got our independence. No, up until World War I, and also part of World War II. But World War I was when the Ottoman Empire dismantled and when Romania got some territories. And we have been at war with them. And the only reason why we have existed as a nation and we have not been conquered totally by the Turks was that we are such hardcore Christians. And we would have rather sacrificed our lives than become Muslims, which is what my ancestors did, because they succeeded to build mosques and convert some people, maybe in Bulgaria and in Turkey, not Turkey, in Greece.
Yeah.
But they did not manage in Romania, which is a very curious case.
I got to tour Athens recently, and I went to the Greek Historical Museum, and a lot of it you expect to be ancient Greece and classical. This was a much more fresh museum, and the war with the Turks is very present for them. They had all the swords, all the guns that were fought recently. They had the banners and the various revolutionary symbols that allowed them to rise up and to gain independence for Greece. And just one thing is, like, you think in the U.S., we have this 200-year barrier. We're kind of like, okay, we haven't been conquered in a long time. We haven't been rolled through. But for other countries, it's much more fresh. And like you're saying with the situation in Kurdistan, one person, not even the American establishment or the military or any of these things, one person seems to have changed their mind on supporting those people. And now they're in a terrible situation once again. They've had a horrible history. And it is kind of a failure of the United Nations, which leads back to kind of the original idea, which was under Woodrow Wilson and those kind of things. Before that, after World War I, they tried to make a League of Nations, and the League of Nations was going to keep the world safe, and that didn't work either. No one really wants to commit to these things. They want to commit halfway, just like with the EU, the way the British joined, but they didn't join the monetary union. So
Even Romania is a second-class citizen of the European Union because we haven't adopted the euro,
mm-hmm.
not because we didn't want, but because we haven't fulfilled some criteria which they imposed. So we are in the kind of situation where we pay our bills and our rent in euro, but our currency loses value in relation to the euro. So unless the salary of the average Romanian increases steadily to cover inflation and also its loss of value in relation to the euro, then we're getting screwed year after year.
It's also nice you're out of the Shenzhen zone, though, the travel zone. Mm-hmm. That worked out for me. But if you were a local there, that wouldn't work out for you. Part of what's really great about the EU is this freedom to travel and this freedom to live where you want to live. So if you don't like your country, or if you have better opportunities in another country, you can move there. And I mean, we take that for granted in the United States. All of the states are, well united. If you need to move to Florida or Colorado or whatever, it works out fine. You pay the same government. It all works out. But to have that here in Europe now too would be a real boon if you guys could join the travel zone.
Yeah, I guess we are second-class citizens of the European Union. I'm not very happy about it. And I hated when, for example, I crossed the border from Italy to France by Flixbus once.
Yeah.
And when the lady at the border checked our passports and saw that I'm Romanian, she also checked my bags.
Yeah, that's discrimination. There's no other word for it. I mean, they're choosing you because of
they can
something
just say
external.
That they do it out of experience because they have had situations with other Romanians. But it's still terrible. And when you realize, she also asked me for how long I'm going to stay and what my intentions are, which didn't happen with the other passengers.
Yeah, it's been relatively lucky. I haven't had to do a major interview since England. England always asks me tons of questions, but if I have an exit flight, it's usually nicer. They just don't want you to stay. It's so nice there. It's so good. They're worried that you'll stay.
No, it's not nice. The weather is terrible and their food is even worse.
And the healthcare is getting spottier and spottier. So I'm not sure it's that much of a land of freedom and joy. But I do look forward to going back there. It's going to be very cool. Be back in England soon. And then I'm going to go to Scotland and Ireland. So
I saw that on Twitter. You went to the National Arts Museum or Natural Museum or something.
Yeah, I went to the Natural History Museum here, saw the dinosaurs statues and the other stuffed animals. It's very full of kids. It was overrun. But then yesterday I went to the German Historical Museum and it was magnificent. So they had everything, and I kept challenging them to bring me older and older stuff, and they kept bringing me older and older stuff. And the great thing about a museum, I like to go backwards in history if I can. It just makes way more sense to me because I know what's happening now. And then as I unravel it, I'm like, oh, those are the conditions. England split, Saudi Arabia and these things into 3 different countries. And, England split India and Pakistan. And, this is what, it used to be like that. And I can unravel backwards rather than picking some random point in time and starting there and trying to learn forwards. It doesn't have the same connection. So I was able to move backwards. And the other thing about a museum that people don't realize, if you're bored with stuff like dishes, I'm not really into China or dishes, walk by it faster and get to the stuff you're interested in. Go to the piece that speaks to you, art museum, history museum, any kind of museum. Find the good stuff that by your definition, good.
Assuming that you went to that museum knowing what to expect, because sometimes tourists, and this is a syndrome of mass tourism, you just go there because it's part of what's on the list.
I've seen that, but I mean, for me, I'm just so interested in everything. I always find something good there. Like this one, I was rolling around and I saw an old uniform, and it kind of looked like a Napoleon uniform. And then I got in my head, I was like, what if they have some Napoleon stuff here? And a couple rows over, they had Napoleon's hat, his sword, and his spurs that he left behind in the carriage after the Battle of Waterloo because he had to get the heck out of there. And he had to jump on a normal horse And he probably wasn't going to wear his fancy hat because people are going to take shots at anybody that has, as well as he, would be able to hide it all. Of course, he very familiar face at the time, very difficult to hide. But yeah, they have his stuff. So
Napoleon in rags. That's a Dylan verse.
there it is.
Like Rolling Stone.
And the language that he used. Yeah.
Go to him now. He calls you. You can't refuse. When you got nothing to lose.
That's it. Good stuff, man.